Hey everyone, welcome to week 7. I can't believe that we're finally here. It flew by for me. I don't know if it flew by for you. I wanted to take a moment and say I had a pleasure reading your papers. A lot of you dug really deep and were really able to relate your client to the theory that you chose. And that really made me excited because it really shows me how much you've grown already through this process of learning. And it was really amazing to see. I'm going to be looking at your case videos this week, so give me some time. I'm going to be going through them as well. So this week we are going to be talking about working with clients with addiction. And working with clients with addiction, sometimes it is beneficial as a clinician, and sometimes you feel a little bit discouraged. So you always have to be mindful about your feelings. So the first thing I want to bring to light is that most people don't associate trauma with addiction. And trauma with addiction is actually the most important thing to think about because they are in this current cycle of addiction, which is trauma. And, trauma is the number one thing that we look at when looking at substance abuse, because the trauma could have happened multiple times. It could have just happened once. It could have happened as a child. It could have happened as an adult. Understanding the need that an addict goes through to want to numb themselves is really important. Most addicts will actually tell you what they're feeling and what they want to numb themselves from. Some are not in tune and some are actually very in tune with themselves. So you have to be really knowledgeable of that as well. Don't be afraid to ask them, why do you feel the need to numb yourself? Questions like that will be provoking to them, and some will be able to tell you, that they are numbing themselves from confrontation, depression, responsibilities that they have, anxiety. So a lot of them will be able to relate that, and some will not. So it's our job as the clinician to be able to bring that out in them, be able to help them dig through their feelings and help them understand what they're going through so that they can pinpoint that exact emotion that's driving the addiction. Another thing that's really important to remember when working with a person who has an addiction is that it could be a lifelong battle for people. You may encounter a client that you have that has been clean and sober for 10 years and they relapsed, or 20 years, or 30 years. You may have some clients that actually come to you for a session and that are high or they're intoxicated. So you might be battling with someone who is currently trying to go through the stages of change, and people that have been through it, but unfortunately they've relapsed in that stage of change, 30 years later. So that can be really difficult for some clients to manage. And some addicts, unfortunately, in a state are only thinking of one thing, and that's their next usage. So a lot of them may have really poor relationships with their family members because they have been stealing from them, they've lied to them, they've put them in danger. There's multiple reasons why family is estranged from addicts, but helping the family understand addiction, I think, is really key, because some families just think that addicts can turn the addiction off just like that, and as we know, that is not true. So really educating families on addiction and helping them understand and be a strong and stable support system for someone is really key, because most people who have addiction don't really have supports because unfortunately they've burned all of those bridges. At this time, the target age is between 18 and 25. We're seeing a lot more overdoses in that age category than ever before. And, unfortunately, the addiction is getting younger and younger. There are 12-year-olds who are addicted to heroin at this time. And, I know schools are trying to do a lot of education. Parents are doing a lot of education. But the kids are these days are snapping back with marijuana becoming legalized in many states. It is becoming a big trend. So being mindful of that as well, and educating parents and children about that as well when they come to you, because unfortunately they could be using marijuana recreationally, but it could be laced with something such as PCP, and that unfortunately could be a gateway to other things. So really, as I stated, adolescent addiction is becoming more and more prevalent in our world today. So you may encounter some of that as well. There's still a lot of research being done about adolescent addiction because there's been a lot of focus federal wise and state wise on the opiate epidemic in general, but not really focusing on the fact that the opiates are also affecting the 11, 12-year olds below 18. They're affecting people very, very young. So I expect that to be something coming up in the next few years, treatment centers to pop up with adolescents, not just adults as well. So, as I've stated before, insurance companies unfortunately rule this world at this time. And, for most people who are on state Medicaid and state benefits, they typically are only authorized 5 to 10 days of rehab. So in 5 to 10 days, the state level expects you to go through treatment and be completely fine and be completely sober. As we know, let's say, for example, 5 days of treatment is really not going to be beneficial to somebody. Being sober for 5 days, they may feel good, but have they truly, really worked through all of their emotion? Absolutely not. So unfortunately, that is a flaw in our system that we currently work with. And for people who have private insurance, you may think, oh, great, it's a little bit better. But as we all know, there are copays to everything. So private insurance may say you can stay up to this in this treatment center for up to 30 days. However, your copay could be $100 to $3,000 daily. So if I want to stay in a treatment center for 30 days, but my copay is $3,000 a day, let's be realistic. I mean, I don't have that kind of money. I don't know if anyone else does, but it's unrealistic that they're going to attend a treatment center. So unfortunately, we live in a world where the treatment is available. However, the system set up in place is not there to help them and help addiction succeed. So really, treatment for the middle class and the lower middle class is it's not doable. This is why the opiate epidemic continues to grow. Also why we see more people attempting to come to us as clinicians one-on-one to try to battle their feelings, thinking that, maybe the one-on-one will help. And sometimes it may be beneficial, and sometimes you're going to see clients who definitely need more of a residential treatment. And now there are many therapeutic approaches to working with addiction. Narrative theory is actually a very common theory that people use for people with addiction. Narrative theory allows people to determine their own understanding of the world and their presence in it. It's stories that, people learn about themselves and how they create the psychological and social realities. So on page 286 in Walsh, it actually gives a lot of great examples of how narrative theory can apply. So I really would like you guys to take a look at that because it's a really good depiction of what narrative theory is. So there are some other therapies too that really work well with addiction. And that is, of course, our famous CBT. CBT is a very, very good therapy for people with addiction. Also, motivational enhancement theory is really good as well. It helps the client feel motivationally enhanced to want to move on, to be able to say, I can battle this addiction from alcohol, heroin, cocaine, whatever it is that they're experiencing. It gives them the strength to do that. So, there are many treatments, as I stated before, such as one-on-one therapy, residential treatment, detox therapy. These are all shown to have great progress for people with addiction. And our skills used are very, very much focused on the client social worker relationship. So our collaborative relationship with our client is key to really any beneficial treatment, but with addiction especially, because if, a client comes to you and says, unfortunately, I relapsed last week. I have a lot of guilt about it. They are really trusting you in order to say that, because some addicts don't trust many people. But if they come to you and they're explaining that collaborative relationship you have is key in order to get them to focus on what they need to. Other things are motivational interviewing. They can assist the client in seeing their own strength. So, working with addiction can be rewarding, yet it can be troublesome because sometimes we're going to meet clients who are just not ready to change. You're going to see clients who have literally lost everything. They've lost custody of their children. They've lost family members. They've lost friends to overdosing. And yet they are still there saying, well, it'll never happen to me. I'm just going to use a little bit each day. So, I really want you to pay attention to your feelings and making sure that you're not putting more into the client than they're putting into themselves, because that can happen sometimes with clients with addiction because you want it so bad for them. You want them to see that they are so capable and that they are so ready. But unfortunately, the client just is not there. And it can be very rewarding in the sense that, you can really help someone to sobriety, really helping them and encouraging them to go to the AA meetings or NA meetings, talking with their sponsors, having family therapy with them. It can be extremely rewarding. So I just really want you guys to be really mindful of how you're feeling when working with clients of addiction, and making sure that you're always collaborating with your supervisor. If you should feel any countertransference, or you feel as though, maybe you're not a helping agent to that client anymore. So if you're watching this, what I would like you to do is email me what you feel you would do if you had a client show up to you who was intoxicated or who was noticeably high on drugs, and what you would do and how you would handle that situation. And I will add an extra point to the case study discussion this week. All right, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. Have a great week, everyone.